Hey, third grade, it's time to go over morning work for this week. Let's get to it. All right. So, like I said last week, I accidentally switched the packets. So this week is week 2, and you're doing week 26 for morning work. And as you can see over here, these are the things I'm going to ask myself when I'm going over these math problems. Okay, Monday says, welcome to Flea Track and Field. One of the most popular flea feats is the dog hair high jump. The record is 37 millimeters. Part 1. Fred Flea jumped 29 millimeters. By how much did he miss the record? So I'm asking myself, what numbers can I work with? Well, if we're just looking at problem 1 and our description, we're looking at 37 millimeters and 29 millimeters. When they ask the question, by how much did he miss the record, that's what we're going to solve. And also it's going to tell us, are we going to add, subtract, multiply, or divide? We're actually going to be subtracting here. So for part 1, we're subtracting 37 minus 29. And if you were thinking to yourself, good job, Miss Major, you got to put the 37 first because it's the bigger number, you are right. So, 2 ways we could do this. If you were just going to solve it by borrowing like we've done in class before, you ask yourself, can I do 7 minus 9? No, because 7 is smaller. We're going to have to borrow from the 3, which becomes 2. And we're going to take a 10 out of the 37, and it becomes, the 7 becomes a 10, or you add a 10, so it's going to be 17. So, 17 minus 9, if you said 8, you're right. 2 minus 2 is 0. So how much did he miss it by? 8 millimeters. If you wanted to solve it by rounding, we could do that too. 37 minus 29. 29 is only 1 away from 30. So we're going to add 1, and I'm going to put that over to the side so I don't forget to take that away. We're going to make that 30. So 37 minus 30, now we don't have to borrow, is going to be 7. And we have to add back that 1, and that will give us 8. So we know we did it right. 2 different ways you could solve that one. For part 2, it says Frances Flea jumped 41 millimeters. By how much did she beat the record? Meaning, how far did she go over the record? So now this becomes, the 41 becomes our biggest number, and we're going to do 41 minus 37. Because it's pretty close, I would just count on my fingers, but you can subtract if you would like to do the work for borrowing. You can't do 1 minus 7, so we're going to borrow from the 4. That becomes a 3. Just like we did up here, we're going to add 10 to the 1's column, so that becomes 11. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. If you said 4, you're right. 3 minus 3 is 0, so it's going to be 4. Another way you could do that, similar to what we did up here, we need 3 in order to get to 40. So 41 minus 40 is 1, but we had to add 3. So 3 plus 1 equals 4. So we know we got that right. Okay? You can pause the video if you need to look at that again. I'm going to move on to Tuesday. Okay. The record for staying on the wagging dog's tail before falling off is 1 minute and 40 seconds. Today, Frank Flea beat the record by 27 seconds. What is the new record? Okay, so now what we're doing is we are combining adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing with telling time and counting with time. So we know that there are 60 seconds in a minute. So I'm going to make everything into seconds and then turn it back to minutes. That's one way we could do it. We are trying to solve what is the new record when we add 27 to the 40. And we could do that right now, actually. So let's do that. 1 minute, we're going to keep that there. 40 seconds plus 27 seconds. I'm lining up my ones column and my tens column. 0 plus 7 is 7. 4 plus 2 is 6. Oh, this is going to work out pretty well. How many seconds did I say are in a minute? 60. So if I'm going to take 60 seconds out of this number right here, I'm left with 7 seconds. So this becomes another minute plus 1 more minute. So 1 minute plus 1 minute equals 2 minutes. How many seconds are left over? 7 seconds. That's the new record. You can pause the video if you would like to slow it down. I'm going to go over to Wednesday. Okay, Wednesday. The record for jumping from one dog's ear to the other is 94 millimeters. Part 1, Flo Flea, that's hard to say. Flo Flea jumped 87 millimeters. Flo missed the record by how many millimeters? And again, this goes back to what we did for Monday's work. So we're going to take the number we can work with from the actual question and then from part 1. And it says she missed it, which means she didn't make it. And if you can tell, or if you can look at the numbers, you can tell that she missed it because 87 is not as big as 94. So when we subtract, biggest number goes on top. I'm not going to borrow. I'm going to count up from 87 to get to 90. So in order to go from 87 to get to 90, I'm going to add 3 because 7 plus 3 is my 10, and that bumps it up. So now I can do 94 minus 90. That's going to give me an easy 4, but I have to remember to add my 3. 4 plus 3 equals 7. So it's going to be 7 millimeters. You can always double check that by going through solving it another way to make sure you got it right. Yep. Okay, part 2. Flynn Flea jumped 93 millimeters. Sadly, he did not beat the record. But how much farther did he jump than Flo? Now, don't get confused or don't just assume that you're going to do 94 minus 93. That's too easy. They say this is the question we're trying to solve for. How much farther did he jump than Flo? So we're comparing it to the 87. Now, let's not overthink this completely. We could spend a lot of time showing our work, which is fine. But if the actual record is 94 and Flynn only jumped to 93, I won't put a subtraction sign because that's not what we're going to do. Well, we could, because what's 94 minus 93? It's just 1. So we're only 1 off, which means that we're 1 step closer to the 87 from Flo. And if we're 1 step closer to the 87, then we're going to shrink this number by 1 to get our new answer, which is 6. And again, that's just the way I solve that. We could always go back and subtract on our own. 93 minus 87. I'm going to borrow quickly because I'm running out of room. 8 minus 8 is 0. So yeah, these numbers match up and these numbers match up. So we solved it a couple different ways to make sure our answer was correct. And it does make sense. All right, moving on to Thursday. Last problem for the week. The flea is a race from the dog's nose to its tail. Flint Flea's time was 2 minutes and 45 seconds. The record was 3 minutes and 13 seconds. By how much did Flint beat the record? Oh, okay. Now they're trying to trick us because we assume that he didn't beat the record because the record was 3 minutes and he only got 2 minutes. But we have to factor in these seconds. So what we could do, there are a couple different things we could do, but what I would suggest is turning these minutes into seconds and seeing how many total seconds each person had, the Flint or the actual record. So I'm going to use blue for Flint. Remember on Tuesday when I said that there are 60 seconds in 1 minute. So 60 seconds equals 1 minute. Okay? If there are 2 minutes, how many seconds would that be? What's 60 plus 60? Or you could do 60 times 2. If you said 120, you're right. So 120 seconds that's how many minutes he had. And we're going to add 45 to see how many total seconds he had. 0 plus 5 is 5. 2 plus 4 is 6. Bring down the 1. So this is what Flint had. This is how many seconds he had. 165 seconds. Okay. Now let's do the same over here for the record. Okay. How many minutes are in, or how many seconds are in 3 minutes? You could add 60 plus 60 plus 60, or you could do 60 times 3. If you're going to do 60 times 3, since we're doing multiplication in 3rd grade, let's try it. Remember what I said last week, if you've got a multiplication number with a 0 in it, you can cover that up until the answer. So what's 3 times 6? 18. Now add back your 0, 180. So 180 seconds. I'm taking my time to reread the problem. I don't know if they answered it, if they asked the right question, but we'll come back and see. And now we have to add our seconds. 180 plus 13, 0 plus 3 is 3, 8 plus 1 is 9, bring down our 1. Okay. Oh, I see. Okay, so in a race, this is why Miss Major was double checking that. In a race, you want to have the shortest time. So the previous record, if we reread the problem, we're racing from the dog's nose to its tail. This is how many seconds Flint ran, and this is how many seconds the previous record, how fast the previous record was. So now we've done our first step of comparing seconds to seconds, and now we are going to compare those two numbers together and see how much Flint beat the record by. So biggest number goes on first, goes on top. And then our smaller number, because Flint went faster than the other number. So we're going to borrow here. You can't do 3 minus 5, so we're going to borrow. That becomes 8. 3 becomes 13. Okay. If you don't remember how to get to 13, I always suggest using your fingers then. So we're at 5. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So that's 8. 8 minus 6 is 2. And 1 minus 1 is 0. So he beat it by 28 seconds. Okay. Another way you could have done that, now that I'm thinking about it, we've got 3 minutes over here. We've got 2 minutes over here. 3 minus 2 is 1, so you could compare your minutes and then change those to seconds. That is going to take a little bit longer than the way we solved it. so that this is probably the faster way, but there are many ways to solve this problem, and hopefully you found one that works for you. All right, we'll see you next week for more morning work.